The young and the restless spoilers under the blinding lights of the city of Paris, amidst the echoing whispers of suspicion and the air of high-stakes deception, something had gone terribly wrong. What had begun as a lavish international business affair, the kind of soiree that blended power with privilege, quickly descended into disarray, and by the time the chaos unfurled in its full measure, one thing became irrefutably clear. Someone had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The tragedy that would shake both continents and boardrooms had a single, lifeless centerpiece as Damien. And standing just a few feet away from his body was a man who had long been a magnet for mistrust, Cain Ashby. For Chance Chancellor, the sheriff of Genoa City and a man who had worn both badge and honor like armor, the sudden unraveling of events was a call to action more than a revelation. He had not come to Paris by coincidence. He had come because his instincts, sharpened by years of unrelenting pursuit of truth and justice, screamed that something was off. Something in the air, some quiet treachery or a shifting glance, had made it impossible for him to sit back in Genoa City and watch from afar. There had been a mistake, yes, but not the kind born of innocence. This was the sort of mistake calculated beneath polished surfaces and champagne smiles, an error only visible to those trained to see through deception. And Chance had seen it. That's why he was here. The grand halls of the estate, where hours earlier whispers of billion-dollar mergers and legacy-building promises danced in the air, now reeked of fear. The body of Damien lay cold, lifeless, a pool of crimson slowly seeping into the imported rugs of the French villa. People screamed. Others ran. And in the center of the growing hysteria stood Cain, frozen, hands half raised, as though caught between fight and flight. The transformation from party guest to suspect had happened in mere minutes. Chance didn't hesitate. His handcuffs clicked with a finality that no amount of pleading could unfasten. "You're under arrest," he said coldly, his voice cutting through the noise. "For the murder of Damien." Lily Winters fell to her knees beside Damien's body, sobbing in disbelief. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to touch Damien's blood-stained shirt, her mind spinning in grief and incomprehension. The tears streamed down her cheeks as the weight of it all crashed into her. Damien, the man she had trusted, the man who had stood by her in moments when her world felt like it was collapsing, was gone. And Cain, her ex-husband, the father of her children, the man who had once begged her for another chance, was being blamed for his death. Could it be possible? Had she really misjudged him so badly? Or was something more sinister at play? But there was more to this than just a murder. Chance knew it. The deeper he dug, the more he saw the cracks in the narrative that had so quickly been accepted. Because if Cain truly was the killer, why had there been no weapon on him? Why had his hands been shaking in confusion instead of guilt? And what about the camera feed? Why did it mysteriously cut out moments before the incident? These weren't just inconsistencies, they were red flags waving in the storm. As Chance began interrogating witnesses, the web of deceit started to show itself. Behind the scenes, whispers of a shadowy figure began surfacing. Dumas. Known only by his last name, Dumas was not a man, not in the conventional sense. He was a presence. An invisible puppeteer who manipulated people like chess pieces and orchestrated chaos with the ease of a maestro. In Genoa City, they whispered about him. In Paris, they feared him. And now, it seemed, he had been watching them all along. What disturbed Chance most was not Dumas' power, but his motive. If Damien was dead, and Cain was the one accused, then someone stood to benefit from both. Someone who wanted Damien silenced and Cain removed as a threat. Someone with enough resources to wipe clean any trace of their involvement. And Dumas fit that description perfectly. Cain, still in custody, maintained his innocence. "I didn't kill him," he insisted, blood splattered on his cuff as he was dragged into an interrogation room. "I was trying to stop it. I was trying to protect him." But no one believed him. Not yet. Not even Lily, whose heart battled with logic as her memories with Cain clashed against the horror before her eyes. She had every reason to believe he was capable of deception, he had proven it in the past, but murder? That was a different level of darkness. The autopsy would later reveal a precise, calculated kill, poison administered hours before the party had even started. Damien never stood a chance. The scene of the crime had been a performance. The murder had been done in silence, and his death timed perfectly to coincide with the arrival of Cain in the main hall. It was a setup. A performance. One meant to frame and destroy. Chance, refusing to let bureaucracy smother justice, kept digging. He retraced Damien's final hours and discovered a string of encrypted messages on the deceased's secure device, messages that hinted at Damien growing suspicious of someone close to the merger. He had feared betrayal. He had reached out for help. And his last message, sent just hours before his death, read, "I think I've found Dumas." That was the tipping point. Damien had found the monster, and the monster had struck first. Now Chance understood why Cain had come to Paris so urgently. It wasn't for power. It wasn't for greed. It was to stop something terrible from happening. But he had failed. And now he was being punished for trying. As Chance raced against time to clear Cain's name, the true challenge became not just identifying Dumas, but surviving the fallout of exposing him. Because Dumas had ears in every corridor, eyes in every camera, and silence at his command. The more Chance pursued the truth, the more dangerous it became. Witnesses started vanishing. A lawyer disappeared en route to delivering a crucial statement. A security guard who had access to the surveillance room was found dead in an apparent overdose. It wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. It was fear. Lily, no longer content to cry at the sidelines, began to fight. She remembered the fire that once made her a force in business and love. And now, she turned that fire on Dumas. She went through Damien's old notes, pulling strings, making calls. She confronted Phyllis, who had briefly dated Damien and might have known something. She reached out to Devon, to Billy, even to Victor Newman himself, who had once warned her. In our world, the dead don't stay dead for long, but the truth always rises. Finally, it was a lead from an unlikely source, Audra Charles, that broke the case open. She had seen something. She had heard more. And when Lily promised her protection and leverage, Audra pointed them to a warehouse in the outskirts of Marseille. That's where Dumas had been monitoring everything, plotting his next move, and preparing to vanish once the frame job on Cain was complete. Chance led the raid himself. Armed to the teeth and moving with the precision of a seasoned warrior, he stormed the hideout. And there he found the truth. Documents linking Dumas to Damien's poisoning. A digital recording of the plan being orchestrated. Proof that Damien had confronted Dumas and that Cain had tried to intervene too late. The nightmare had come full circle. Cain was exonerated. The charges were dropped. But the damage was done. His name had been dragged through the filth. Lily had seen him in handcuffs, believed, if only for a moment, that he was capable of murder. That fracture would never fully heal. And Damien? He remained gone. Another casualty of greed and power. In the end, Dumas escaped. Of course, he did. A man like that doesn't get caught. Not yet. But he had been exposed. And now, for the first time, he was vulnerable. Chance stood at the edge of the Seine, watching the sunrise reflect against the water, feeling the weight of everything he had uncovered. Genoa City wasn't far behind. And neither was the storm coming with him. Because if Dumas wanted to silence truth, he had underestimated the resilience of the people who still believed in justice. Chance had stared into the eyes of evil and lived to tell about it. And next time, he wouldn't just be ready, he would be waiting. The candlelight in the Parisian estate flickered softly against the towering windows as the party pressed on, even as a storm of tension lingered just beneath the surface. Lily Winters, composed but visibly shaken, offered a faint smile to Damien and Devon before stepping aside with Cain Ashby. Her posture, though steady, betrayed the emotional weight she carried. She gently assured them she'd be fine, but her eyes stayed locked on Cain. Eyes that had once known trust and love, now clouded by uncertainty and regret. Damien hesitated for a moment, sensing something deeper, but Lily's assurance was firm enough to placate him. With a nod to Devon, he let her go, watching as she and Cain disappeared into one of the private sitting rooms down the hall. Cain's demeanor was a delicate mix of desperation and composure. He wasn't here to fight. He was here to explain, or at least attempt to. He leaned against the fireplace mantel, the glow casting long shadows on the polished floor, and began to speak. "There's more to this story, Lily," he said, voice low and urgent. "Things I can't say here. Not tonight. But by morning, you'll understand everything." His words, though calm, carried the weight of secrets too long buried. But Lily's eyes, though tired and emotionally spent, didn't soften. "You keep saying there's more," she replied, arms folded across her chest, her voice steady. "But I don't know if I'll even be here in the morning. I don't know if I want to be." That confession wasn't a threat, it was exhaustion. She had spent too long being caught in webs spun by the same man standing before her now. Cain's expression darkened, not with anger, but with the sting of recognition. He took a step closer, careful not to close the space too quickly. "I can't walk away from us," he admitted. "Even now, even with everything. I can't give up." His voice broke slightly at the edges, the bravado fading. "You and the kids, you were the only real thing I ever had." But Lily didn't waver. "You're delusional," she said softly, not to wound, but to wake him up. "If you think there's a future left for us, then you've been clinging to a memory that doesn't exist anymore. You burned the bridge, Cain. It didn't collapse on its own." Cain let out a breath, a long, resigned exhale. And then he offered her a faint smile. Not smug. Not hopeful. Just human. "A guy can dream," he murmured. "That's all I've got left, I guess." With that, he gently touched her shoulder, a quiet farewell more than a gesture of possession. "Good night, Lily," he said, before slipping back into the main hall, leaving her alone with the silence that clung to the room like smoke. Back at the party, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. The clinking of champagne glasses and orchestrated laughter couldn't mask the fact that new guests had arrived. And with them, a fresh wave of complications. Michael Baldwin, sharp-eyed and already suspicious, Lauren Fenmore Baldwin, polished but perceptive, Abby Winters, elegant and alert, and Chance Chancellor, quietly observant, scanning the room like a man trained to find danger in the corners no one else noticed. As the four of them exchanged glances and greetings with those already present, it became clear they were no longer behind on the headlines. The identity of Dumas, Cain himself, was no longer a whisper among a select few. It had become public knowledge, or at least public enough that it couldn't be ignored. Murmurs passed between them like sparks. Why now? What does he want? How long has he been playing this game? The party, once a venue of luxury and diplomacy, now pulsed with suspicion and barely concealed tension. Abby's voice was the first to cut through the quiet analysis. "So Cain's Dumas," she muttered, eyes following him across the room as he rejoined the partygoers. "What does that even mean anymore?" Her tone was equal parts bewildered and skeptical. Michael's reply was sharper. "It means the man we thought we knew has had his hands in a dozen backdoor dealings we didn't know about," he said. "And if he's smart, which I believe he is, he's 5 steps ahead of all of us right now." Lauren exchanged a look with her husband before nodding slightly toward Chance. "You're not just here to dance, are you?" she asked. Chance gave a tight smile. "I came here for clarity," he said, keeping his tone even. "And if anyone here is planning to use this night as a cover for something darker, they're going to be very disappointed." All eyes turned as Cain approached. He smiled easily, the image of calm and grace under scrutiny, offering warm greetings to the newcomers. He embraced Abby with the casual affection of old friendship, shook hands with Michael and Lauren, and gave Chance a look that was half challenge, half camaraderie. "Glad you all could make it," he said, as if nothing at all had changed. But behind that smile was strategy. Cain knew that revealing his true identity had stirred the pot. He had set things in motion that could no longer be undone. But tonight was not the night for full disclosure. He would save his explanation, his true plan, for a moment when it would have the most impact. For now, he would play the gracious host, the misunderstood man who had done questionable things for possibly justifiable reasons. He kept his secrets close, his enemies closer, and his timing exact. Because Cain Ashby, Dumas, wasn't just playing defense anymore. He was orchestrating a reckoning. And by dawn, the game would look very different.